Welcome dear students, I hope you have liked it so far. Now we have reached to the final part of this series, an introduction to the features of animal kingdom. We are now at part 4, discussing about organ systems, exchange and contents. How do certain organ systems help to exchange various components with the surroundings, whether that is gases, whether that is waste, or it is even gametes. So let's start. In the previous video, we have talked about how the circulatory system helps to ensure that the materials move evenly and efficiently throughout the entire body. The heart pumps the entire blood or the hemolymph through the body, carrying certain important nutrients and signaling chemicals through the entire body, and how it maintains its own efficiency in the terms of open and closed circulatory system. One other important component that the blood has to carry is oxygen, and oxygen has to be acquired from it, the immediate surroundings. And the surroundings depend on the habitat the organism is existing in, whether it's an aquatic or a terrestrial habitat, and within aquatic, whether it is a freshwater or a marine habitat. So based on that, the demands are different, and based on that, the adaptations are also different. However, underneath the layers of all of these adaptations, we find certain similarities, and layer is a cube because we are going to talk about first of all the gills. So gills as such are the organs which look like these structures with a branch-like tree or the leaves of a tree or lamellar kind of structure, the pages of a book, because they increase the surface area of absorption. This is a common adaptation that we find in aquatic animals. In contrast, in terrestrial animals, we find adaptations such as the lungs, or we find adaptations such as the tracheal network in the case of insects. But across all of these different structures, what is common is that composed of an epithelial membrane, which covers a network of dense capillaries, which ultimately perform the task of diffusion. So through that, the material is exchanged. And through that, organism is able to take in sufficient oxygen and get rid of the gaseous waste, that is carbon dioxide. And this is the core of every single structure, whether we talk about alveoli in the lung, whether we talk about the basic components of gills, or whether we talk about book gills or book lungs in arachnids, or whether we talk about tracheal networks as seen in the arthropods. So, or often we also can talk unique function or perform unique functions such as vocalization, as you see in the amphibians such as frog. Here is the example of that structure that is connected with these respiratory structures, which is the buccopharyngeal form of respiration in the case of frogs. And also in certain animals, for example, your tadpoles, which are the younger stages of your frogs, often we see that the kind of method that is present in the younger or the adult stage, especially in these metamorphic animals, is distinct as well. So there's a huge diversity of the methods of respiration that you can see in this particular table given here. Same goes for any other form of waste as well, especially the one that is carried by the blood, but other than the gaseous waste, which include your protein metabolic waste, you include your carbohydrate metabolic waste, it includes your minerals, excessive water, etc. These also have to be get rid of throughout the body. And for that matter also, you find certain modifications, but again relying on a single component or a single framework, that is blood reaching to a certain filtration unit, which performs three tasks, that is of filtration, absorption, often also called as reabsorption, and secretion. And then ultimately the waste is formed. Now, these structures which are responsible for this purpose can differ animal to animal. These could be Malpighian tubules in insects such as cockroaches, as seen in this diagram of the digestive system, and around it you can see these Malpighian tubules present. Or it could be the green or the adrenal gland as found in crustaceans, whether it is prawns, your other crustaceans, crayfishes, etc. Whether it is rennet cells as found in ascarids, whether it is nephridia found in annelids such as earthworm, your nereis and other annelids, or it could be a more gentler or more primitive structure to nephridia, such as the protonephridium, which is responsible for diffusion of gases almost directly because of a single layer of epithelial tissue present to directly allow the exchange to occur. Or it could be kidneys, which have distinct fundamental unit called as nephrons for filtration of blood. Now, the kind of waste produced by the animals, especially the majority of the waste that is excreted through your urine or your excretory system, primarily, that we primarily talks about the urinary system or the system that is derived from your reproductive tubes and in association with them. So that particular structure gets rid of your waste rich in nitrogen, whether it is coming from your protein sources or whether it is coming from your nucleotide sources. So based on what waste is being generated out, we have different categories of animals. You can classify animal as ammonotelic if it is releasing out ammonia. You can classify them as urotelic if they are releasing urea. If they are releasing out uric acid, they call them as uricotelic, or guanotelic when they release out guanine directly, which is a nucleotide itself. So uric acid and guanine are produced from nucleotide metabolism, while protein metabolism lead to the formation of ammonia and urea. And these are the structures that are seen here as well. This is of urea, this is of ammonia, this is of uric acid, and this is of guanine. To try to find out about what are the molecular interactions or molecular similarities between these chemicals, how are they formed, what pathways are responsible for these chemicals to form. Okay, but what broadly we see is that why do these differences occur is because of the environment or the habitat the animal is present again. If they're present in aquatic habitat, we often see ammonotelic or urotelic kind of excretion methods, because in these organisms they have to release out content which is soluble in water, and ammonia is quite readily soluble, even more than your urea. And that way, in majority of aquatic animals, including invertebrates, we find that ammonia is the primary waste product that is excreted out. Ureotelic is primarily seen in your mammals, your certain amphibians, and also certain fishes. Uricotelic method, on the contrast, results in the formation of crystallized pellets, and these are rich in uric acid, and these are primarily released by animals which are living in arid or extremely warm terrestrial regions, or also often dry regions in particular, such as birds, reptiles, insects, and even gastropods. Guanotelic is primarily seen in arachnids such as scorpions and spiders, and these are again produced by nucleotide metabolism, and hence we already know scorpions and spiders are mostly found in arid regions or often in your dry regions, although there are exceptions as well. Certain animals can show both either ammonotelic or uricotelic depending on the availability of water, depending on the kind of habitat they are present in at that particular point of time. Now, the next aspect that will come into our understanding is that of sexual dimorphism. But before that, we need to understand that there are two modes of reproduction, that is the asexual mode and sexual mode of reproduction. We are going to focus on the sexual mode of reproduction, which is predominantly seen in the case of animals. Now, one of the key features of sexual reproduction is to ensure that the mating or the exchange of the material, or the organism coming together to perform the exchange of gametes happens successfully. And for that purpose, we see various modifications happening. One of that key aspect, and an evolutionary aspect, is that of sexual dimorphism, wherein animals within a single species itself has evolved structures, features, or distinctions between each other, which are entirely driven by the sexual selection, that is, the desire for producing viable mates, viable gametes, and viable offsprings. So, for example, the huge plumage that you see of the tail feathers of peacock to attract females, or whether it is a very large size of the female golden ox spider in comparison to the extremely small male spider, or it is a parasitic life cycle of the male anglerfish, which sticks itself to the female body and continuously supplies the sperms. All of these are examples of sexual dimorphism. Birds being one of the most well-read and well understood group of animals because of the beautiful plumage and beautiful colors that we see in their case. However, sexual dimorphism is present in almost every single group. The nature or the rate of which could differ. For example, in case of mammals, you might not see the extravagancy of, as you see in the case of peacock or peahen, or in the case of birds in general, but still sexual dimorphism occurs even if you compare human beings. Do try to think about that. And one thing we have to understand, at times you might also find organisms which may not show the binary characteristics of the exact male or exact female. They might be organisms which show characteristics which are in between based on their birthing conditions, or they might also be organisms which show the presence of both the kind of structures. Such organisms are often called as gynandromorph, where gyne is coming from the female and andro is coming from male. So both structures are shown in a single organism. So such possibilities are also there. Do read about this topic. It's a very interesting topic, and it is an important feature, important parameter that has driven evolution for many of the animals, and actually most of the sexually reproducing animals. Once successful mating has occurred and the organisms are now close together to exchange their gametes, there are two ways in which the gametes can be exchanged. Either the female will release all the eggs externally in a liquid medium, and the male will also release sperms in there, or else it could happen that the males could directly deposit the male gametes into the body of the female. And why does it happen that way? Because it's the female's body which has to produce a cell which is more rich in nutrients, is more demanding, and also has to provide extra nutrients for at least either the short duration of time the egg is inside of her body, or for even drastic periods of time, as we see in the case of mammals. So that way we have two kinds of fertilization, external and internal fertilization. And we also see certain animals which may have features of both males and female, as I previously discussed, in a single body also, normally or through variations as well, such as in the case of earthworm or snails. We see that both males and female structures are found, and such animals are called as hermaphrodites, and they're able to internally fertilize each other through that. So it's a very interesting aspect when we talk about reproduction in the case of animals, because it plays a very vital role in the continuation of species. It may not play a vital role for the survival of an individual organism per se, but it does play a very important role for the survival of the species as a whole. So with this, we have covered up most of the important aspects that are used to understand animals, and I hope it was pretty clear to you. You can always comment in the chat box and tell more about what you need to know and what questions do you have. But for now, I have a few questions for you to explore, and do give the answers in the chat box or the comment section. How have the respiratory and excretory systems evolved over time to support animals in their specific adaptations? What advantages does internal fertilization offer over external fertilization? I mean, why do certain animals release it out into the water while others release it out inside the body? There might be certain advantages as well as disadvantages of both the methods. Try to explore that. How would sexual dimorphism have evolved? Why evolve it in the first place? Why not go with the asexual mode of reproduction? Why go for sexual mode of reproduction? Do ask these questions, explore further and reflect deeper until we meet in the next section or the next video. Till then, keep learning. And do follow, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much.